Greetings, and thank you for joining us for another SANS ICS Concepts Overview. I'm Don C. Weber of Cutaway Security and a certified SANS instructor. In this concept overview, we are joined by Brandon Workentin, a consultant at CyPhy Defense. Brandon has joined us to talk about 6 things not to do in the field during an ICS security assessment. Brandon and I discuss our experiences as information security professionals working in control environments. We discuss some of the challenges and things that help us succeed when working with industrial control team members. If you enjoy this video and the topics we cover in the SANS ICS concept overviews, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment if you have a question about this topic or suggestions for future content. Hello, today we're joined by Brandon Workentin. And Brandon is going to talk to us today about some of his experiences doing information security within control environments. So, Brandon, welcome to the SANS ICS Concepts. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Thanks, Don. Glad to be here. My name is Brandon Workentin. I am a consultant in the ICS security space. I've spent the last probably about 4 or 5 years or so in the ICS network security monitoring space, working for a couple different vendors in that world. Before that, my background was on the compliance side in the electric industry. And then before that, I'm actually a career changer when I was in my 30s from being a middle school and high school teacher. So that's kind of the quick synopsis is how I ended up where I am today. Decided to get into tech from being a teacher and lucked into security and then lucked into the ICS world. And now I'm here.
Awesome. That's great. So today you're going to talk to us about the 6 things not to do in the field. So how did you come up with this concept? Why do you think it's important to talk about this?
So I had this idea because as somebody I did not go to college to be an engineer when I was 22 years old and stuff like that. I did not grow up in the ICS world. I was a kind of a mid-career change person. And so the first time you go to do a site visit, to go out to a oil refinery or to go to a very large electrical substation or something, it may be a little intimidating. You may feel out of place. And so I thought of this as an idea for kind of demystify that, make it bring some ideas to kind of share what that might feel like to be on one of those visits, as well as how to make that be a successful visit for you and for whoever you're with, your client or customer.
Awesome. Well, I can't I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So thank you.
All right. So this is 6 things not to do on a site visit. So the first thing that I'm going to say is to don't wear a clean hard hat. So this is kind of silly, starting off with kind of a silly one. I know some people who, like true blue engineers, field operations people, if you show up with a bright white clean hard hat, then they think that just means you don't know anything about what's going on in the field, anything about the OT world in general. I think it may be less of an issue now than it was maybe 20 years ago or whatever. I've heard more stories about gatekeepers in the field than I have actually experienced gatekeepers in the field like that. But it's just something to kind of think about. I've heard stories about people who, when they get a new hard hat or are taking a vendor out for the first time, they've tied a hard hat to the back of their car and dragged it through the dirt road for a little while just to scuff up the hard hat a little bit. So you get kind of that you don't look quite as much as a newbie when you show up and stuff.
Actually, yeah, that's kind of why I put a bunch of, one of my recommendations was, or one of the recommendations that was given to me was, start putting stickers on the hat. Mine obviously hasn't been dragged behind everything. It looks new, even though I've been using it for a little while. But yeah, that was one of the recommendations, kind of like from a social engineering. But anytime we're going on site to meet new people, even though we're not social engineering them to get access, we're social engineering them to get that that first impression. And so, if like you said, if gatekeepers, there can be some out there closing the door. So that's one of the things that people pointed out to me as well.
Yeah, that's funny because I have my hard hat just has a single sticker on it because I started at CyPhy Defense during COVID, maybe 6 months ago or 8 months ago or something. And I've never actually worn this in the field at all or anything like that. So all I did was put my safety vest inside my hard hat.
Yeah.
So that if I ever take it somewhere, I have it. And then it's been sitting on the shelf in my entryway since I received it.
Yeah, my hard hat needs one of those CyPhy Defense stickers, so we'll have to work that out later.
Yeah. So on a much more serious note, we'll talk about the second thing not to do is do not ignore the safety briefing when you go on site. So in the industrial space, pretty much anywhere you go. When you go to a site visit to go out into the field, you're going to receive a safety briefing. Most industrial organizations, safety is kind of ingrained into the culture to the point where if safety is not ingrained into the culture, they probably have major issues. And you see this every once in a while. Sadly, a couple times I can think of in the last couple of years, and there's been industrial accidents where people there was one in Texas that I'm thinking of where I had a coworker who, when this plant had an industrial accident, he was like not really surprised because that plant had the reputation he was from the area, and it had the reputation of safety not being ingrained into the culture, and so. I would say every good industrial organization has safety ingrained into the culture, because if you don't, then things are going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's my experience, going on sites, different locations, always start off with the safety brief, always have some very specific things. You can see the people in the picture that, wearing hard hats, the safety vests, the safety person, they actually have, most locations that I've been to actually have safety teams that will call people out for not having their vest buttoned. The last place I went to, I didn't have gloves and they gave me gloves. Now, I didn't have to type with these on, but if I was walking around outside of the area that I was working in and stuff like that, I better have these on, or they'll pull me over and, pull up to me and start talking to me, asking me where my gloves are, tell me to put them on. And if you do that enough, you get a safety violation. They'll ask you to leave the site. And if you leave for a safety violation, you might not get invited back. So that could have serious issues for whatever you're trying to do and help them with. So completely understand. That's my experience.
And really the bottom line, the reason why you have safety briefings is because if you don't know what the dangers are, accidents are going to happen and things are going to happen. I have a very good friend who worked in the oil fields in Wyoming, where he grew up. And he had a coworker. He worked in the oil fields for about 3 months because he had when he was 19, 20 years old, because he had a coworker who was moving a pipe and had the pipe drop and sheared off all 8 fingers on both hands. And my friend was like, I walked off. He said, I was done. And I don't blame him. And I mean, it's kind of gory, but the reason why it is just so super important when you're in the industrial space, that you know what is required to stay safe, and you do what is required to stay safe.
Absolutely. And it all boils down to consequences. So I'm not bothered by those stories because they help drive home the consequences of some of the things that are possible within these environments. And the fact that the people that we're working with and asking people to do things and interacting with them, absolutely, those are the consequences if we do something that endangers them.
So the next thing not to do on your first site visit is to touch things. Now, obviously, that's a little hyperbolic. You're going to touch things. But what I mean by that is don't go out and touch random things that you don't know what you're doing. When I worked for security vendors, a couple different security vendors. Every site visit, I would just tell the potential client or the client that we had a policy that the customer racked and stacked our equipment and plugged in our equipment and so on, just because if something quits after you've touched it, after you've done anything with it, who is going to get blamed? And the answer is you are going to get blamed. And I was at a manufacturing plant one time doing a project where we were putting a network tap in between the engineering workstation and the switch that it was connected to. And we did that, started gathering information using our product. And after a little while, the engineering workstation, the tap came unplugged, and it was a relatively cheap tap that didn't fail open. And so the workstation lost connectivity to the assets on the floor because it came unplugged. And I was really happy in that instance where I wasn't the one who plugged it in and caused that engineering workstation to lose to lose that connectivity, because that's the kind of negative impact that you don't want to be your fault.
Absolutely, yeah. And understanding what's in the rack, understanding what you're doing, it's really easy. And I caught myself doing this at the last location I was. I had plugged in to a network port and was doing some things, and I reached out to disconnect my connection to that switch. And right before I pulled it out, I was like, wait a minute, because I was looking over to my left and doing something. And I looked back and I had actually grabbed the wrong network cable. And the one that I would have pulled out probably would have disconnected everything from that. TCP is a great thing. Once you plug it back in, those communications could or should come back up cleanly. But at the same time, we don't want to risk that in these environments because of some of the latency issues and communications that could set off alarms and so forth. So definitely, don't touch things you don't understand, but you will be touching things. So make sure and communicate with people, talk to people about what you're going to do. At least that's my experience. So it's right in line with yours.
Yeah. And there's a little kind of different viewpoint of the same thing. Is we're talking about touching things on purpose, but don't touch random things as well. Whether, and this gets back to what you said, Don, about know what you're doing. There, especially like in most of my experiences in the electric space. In the electric space, just being near a potential hazard can cause that hazard to become a realized hazard. And so that ties into kind of the next thing not to do, which is don't go wandering around. So in substations, they call it an arc flash, where you can have a electric arc that goes from equipment to something feet away, relatively far away, where you may not even be within arm's reach, but you can get severely injured. You can Google arc substation arc flash videos, and you can see the people catching on fire from this. It's a real thing. And so when you go into a large substation, a lot of times they'll have or even a manufacturing plant or whatever, they'll have tracks written, painted, or put on the floor where you only walk within your track. You don't cut corners. Cutting 10 feet off of a corner, and rather than making a nice 90-degree sharp angle, may not seem like a big thing, but it may be. And just because you attended that safety briefing doesn't mean you know what all of those issues are. So you Absolutely. May not know why they put that track where they did. It may be because there's something overhead, or something within an unsafe distance or something like that. It's there for your safety.
Absolutely. I mean, the last place, you're talking about utilities, and you're talking about things that could hurt you or kill you. The lab environments, they don't necessarily have all of the safety lines and stuff like that. And that was actually a part of the last safety briefing that I was in. Oh, by the way, be careful mind yourself there's a hot leads here. If you lean up against them, you will be injured. So you do have to monitor yourself in these environments. Keep your hands and arms close to you, realizing where you're setting your drinks down, your computers down, and stuff like that, because these things are dangerous. So it looks like you have a couple other things.
Yeah, so kind of a couple other reasons why you wouldn't wander around. Proprietary information is everywhere, so it just doesn't look good if you're trying to build rapport, build trust with a potential client or a customer or something, or even if you're just on a tour with somebody, you want to get along well with them, and it just doesn't look good if you're wandering around. I'm curious by nature, and so a lot of times I'll be like, ooh, look at that, what's this relay and stuff and thing like that. And if you're wandering out by yourself and doing that, making it look surreptitiously, that just may not look bad. And most of us are probably not going to be performing corporate espionage or even catching somebody performing corporate espionage in that kind of environment. But it's a thing where it just doesn't look good. And then lastly, unescorted access may also be a compliance issue. In the electric world, we have what we call NERC-CIP compliance, where in general, escorted access means line of sight. So if I'm in a facility where I need escorted access because I haven't had my background check performed and all that, and I walk around 3 racks to somewhere in the other side of the room where my escort cannot see me anymore, that's actually a compliance violation, which probably should be reported or may need to be reported. And if you don't report it, then there's even more compliance issues on that kind of thing. So
I think to your point, I was actually talking to Tim Conway about this the other day, and he shed some light on this for me. Yeah, I mean they apps, if you're within an environment where you have to be escorted, and they lose sight of you. His example was the secure door that they have between, sometimes, I mean, they automatically shut, and if you're doing something and you look up and that door is closing, they're usually the type of doors that you don't want to put your hand in and block it because you lose fingers. But once that door closes, you lose that visual sight. It is a compliance violation. You do have to report it, which means now you're forcing all of those people to do that extra paperwork, potentially leading up to a fine. Certainly this would be, this kind of quick thing might not result in the $1 million fine that we were talking about at the beginning, but it could potentially be up to that depending on what they're doing. So it's unescorted access, being a compliance issue, that it seems to people that are coming from the corporate environments and doing pen tests and security assessments. I used to wander off all the time. I used to avoid my escorts in these business environments, but very specifically, they didn't have these requirements. And it has to be taken into consideration around these things. Safety as well. You don't know where you're going, especially if you've only been there once. You need those people to help you.
Yeah. And I feel like we're harping on safety, but I think that's on purpose. If you haven't been in an industrial environment, if you take one thing away from this little talk, be safe in those environments. That would be my number one takeaway. So the next thing that you don't want to do is don't take pictures with a caveat without asking. So one of the cool things about the industrial world is you get to see a lot of really cool stuff. So this picture is where a undersea fiber optic cable makes landfall in North America. It happened to be at the site I was at. I was not there working on the fiber optic cable or anything related to that. But it happened to be at this site, and we were in the truck, and my escort, the guy from the company I was with, pointed it out, and I asked him if I could take a photo because it's kind of cool. I've never seen one of those facilities before. It's really underwhelming at the same time as being cool. But I asked permission, and then before I threw it in the slide, I cropped out the guy sitting next to me in the truck because I didn't ask him if I could put his picture in a presentation like this. So in general, when you go to these places, and this gets back to the proprietary information as well, a lot of industrial places will have a no photos policy. A lot of times they will tell you that. Sometimes they won't tell you because they might think it's just kind of assumed. So don't go taking pictures of stuff, even if you think it's cool, with that caveat that if you have permission, then you do.
Absolutely. And to me, this is one of those scoping things that you need to remember to ask, because, pictures, go a long way, especially when we're talking about some of these situations that we run into, things that we want to improve, things that we want to demonstrate work effectively. Putting the pictures into our reports and recommendations and so forth goes a long way with the understanding. Pictures worth 1,000 words. But they could, depending on the facility, depending on regulatory requirements, and safety. Go back to safety again. I was, one of the distilleries that I helped, we couldn't take pictures in specific locations because of the fire risk. And when there's a whole bunch of people walking around in there, you don't want to start a flash fire. You're going to affect all of them, not just yourself.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I mean, even I don't generally think of photos as a safety risk, but some of these places are so dangerous that you need to know exactly what all the problems are, and they might have. That makes me think they may have something like a no pictures policy and tell you the policy, but not tell you why. And so, if you think that the policy is not important, maybe you just don't know why the policy is important.
That's a good point.
So the sixth thing not to do on a site visit or your first site visit is don't burn bridges with the people you are there to work with. If you if you don't know something, then it's better to say I don't know or I'll get back to you than it is to make something up to try to look like you know what you're talking about. You'll start to lose respect from them, and if you start losing their respect, then you can easily lose access to them or to the facility. I know of somebody who was on a large ship, and this kind of gets back to don't touch things. They unplugged they unplugged something from a switch so that they could plug in their device, and caused a navigation system to go down. Now that's a major issue on a large ship, and so they actually were asked, as you talked about, not invited back or escorted off. If you lose their respect, and especially if it's something that's a little different, but if it's something safety related, you may not just not be invited back. You may be escorted off at that time. And obviously, if you lose access, you lose opportunities as well. So I mentioned I kind of lucked into the ICS security field as a career changer. I love the opportunities I've had. I've been able to see some really cool stuff, do some really cool things, and to lose those opportunities because you burned the bridges would kind of be a bummer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every site that I've gone to, one of the things that I've tried to do, and certainly there's a bit of gatekeeping. Some of that gatekeeping is because the processes are very unique and specific. There is, chemical engineering or electrical engineering or maritime, as you're talking about, in knowledge about what is important for that goes a long way. But certainly those people don't necessarily understand some of the issues around the digital aspects of their network and of their systems, of their controls. And so information security personnel can provide that information, but just because we're experts at that, we should be working as a team. And if we're not going to be working as a team, coming off as arrogant and stuff like that, that's quickly going to burn the bridges, as you said right there. You lose that respect. And, I call it building the brick wall. If you start acting like this, go into these places, not realizing that they are experts at certain things, sometimes PhDs, and you'll lose their respect, lose their access, and not be invited back. So, and we don't want that to happen. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, the fact that they're experts in things is lost by some people who think that, unfortunately, cybersecurity has kind of this reputation in some circles as being people who think they know everything that other people don't. And reminds me of, I used to do quite a few trainings for both IT people on security tools, or OT people on security tools, and IT cybersecurity people on kind of the OT world. And one of the things that I would do, especially when there were real OT people in the trainings, was I would say my title was something like ICS security engineer or systems engineer or something like that. And I would make a throwaway joke about how I had engineer in my title, but I wasn't a real engineer, because the chemical engineers you mentioned earlier, kind of real engineers, they know a lot of stuff about their process, about their environment, that as an outsider, I am never going to know as much as they do in that area. And so if you have somebody who tries to act like they know everything in that area, act like they know everything, then you quickly, they're really good at identifying when that person is just making stuff up, and they lose their respect.
100%.
So the last thing, had a bunch of things not to do on a site visit. So kind of a bonus on it are 3 things to do at a site visit. So I do like to kind of finish on a high note. So first, be interested in the product and the environment and what's going on. I did a training for a electric company one time where we had cybersecurity people from that company in the training, and we had field personnel from the training, from that company in the training. And we were able, as part of this training, we actually scheduled a site visit to a substation where a lot of the IT security people had never been in a substation before. And after we do this site visit, one of the IT security people was like, this person, a field ops guy, they said this person said like 6 things in 3 days of training. And then once we got onto the site visit, it was like he was a different person, because he was in his element, and he was talking about things and answering questions. And you could tell when people started asking questions about the equipment, he was really interested in that, because he was in his element, and he was able to teach his share his information as well. It makes people feel more involved if you're interested in what they're doing, and you're able to learn so much. I would not be where I am today if I was not interested in learning new things. And so
Absolutely.
I'm curious by nature and like to learn new things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like to point out to people is that when we're working in these environments, it is a process. They are doing something, whether it's delivering energy or they're making a product, and they're really proud of what they do. Human beings are proud by nature, and usually the people that you're assigned to work with, they're typically not the disgruntled employees. They're the ones that actually believe in what they're doing. They want it to succeed because this is what they do, so being interested in the product, being interested in what their job is, and just asking them questions about it goes a long way to not only endearing you to them, but also understanding what they do on a day-to-day basis, what some of the risks are, but just generally understanding what cool thing that they're actually doing.
I like that. Understanding what their risks are, what they're concerned about is a great point. When I do trainings for IT cybersecurity people, one of the things I talk about is, as IT cybersecurity people, we don't know, or let me rephrase that. The people we go to oftentimes think that we don't know what their concerns are. And we may talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those may be the three big main concerns on IT cybersecurity side, but I guarantee you those are not the main concerns to field personnel, to people who are running a process, running a plant, that kind of thing. And oftentimes you go in where they have the background expectation that we don't understand what their concerns are. And so, which can kind of cause an adversarial kind of relationship, even if neither person really wants to be adversarial. And being curious and being interested really lets you learn and know how you can help that person, how you can work with that person to make their lives easier as well. As security people, one of my big soapboxes is use security to help other people in the organization be more productive, be more safe, be more getting their job done easier. We can do that in security. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's something we can do as security people. That's one of my other soapboxes. And it made me think of that.
So, excellent. So what do you mean by feed the people?
So feed the people is really a callback to my friend Chris Sistrunk, who's actually at Mandiant now, but he worked for an electric utility for a long time. He's kind of one of the big name, much bigger name than me in the ICS security space.
I wish Chris would come on here. So we'll see if we can get him, but I don't think we will be able to. But he's great. He's a good friend too.
So I work for CyPhy, which is a very small consultancy. So media appearances from a smaller company is a lot easier than appearances from a larger company. Chris is a really good guy, so if you have a chance to meet him somewhere, I'd recommend it. But his kind of one of the things that he's famous for saying is take donuts. So when you go to have a meeting with people, bring donuts to if you're going to a lunch and learn or something, bring some food. I've worked at one place where the security team, every time we did a site visit, we would kind of schedule a lunch around that site visit as well, and take oftentimes even if my escort was from the company, the customer or the client, they may not have that person may not have access to everywhere, because they may not know everything about all the environments they're in. So we would often need to have an escort also. So kind of double escort in a sense. And we would almost always schedule a lunch with the people. And I can remember at one of these lunches, the guy said that we were the only people who did that. And let me tell you, if we wanted to schedule something, it was pretty much as easy as emailing and saying, hey, can we get into this location on this day, and getting it, because we treated them like people and not just like people who were serving us. And so it wasn't, it's not that we were trying to be ulterior. You talked about kind of social engineering earlier. We're doing good by treating people well. That makes things work easier.
It's extremely important.
And then the last kind of bonus item is do be open to new things. So I was on my little story for this one is I was on a cruise ship one time, or a large ship, and we went down to the engine room to do kind of a site survey in the engine room. And when we went to go down into the engine room, we had to take off our ID tag we were wearing, hang it up on a board, and take a new ID tag that just said basically engine room access on it, and go down. And I was actually with a sales guy on this trip, and he was like, "Why are we doing this?" And I said, "Well, it's because if the engine blows up while we're down there, they want to know, they want to have our name tags up here so that they can call our families and tell us where we were when that happened, because you're not coming back from a giant explosion like that. And he was like, oh, and I was telling that story to sales engineer for a IT security company, and he was like, this is in a hotel bar, and he's like, I'm out. He's like, I'm done. Not interested. I am not gonna do that. And I mean, he's a good guy. There's nothing wrong with that viewpoint, but in my opinion, being open to new things just lets you see so much new things, learn so many new things, and gets back to being curious,
Yeah.
being able to learn new things.
And that's that's one of the things that when I think about that, that comes to mind is more of just because we understand how the technology is deployed and how it's used, and in a lot of organizations, these are people that are finding ways to make things work. And so, they've solved problems and they're implementing certain things in certain ways. So being open to new ways of implementing these technologies, you absolutely have to. Now, you might have to help them understand some of the risks around those implementations, but being open to those, having an open mind around these things is going to take you a long way in these types of environments.
So I'd like to thank you, Don and SANS, for inviting me on here. Thank you to everybody who's watching this for giving us a little bit of your time as well. My contact information is here. My last name is Workentin. Doesn't look like it when you read it, but my last name is Workentin, and that's kind of my social handle anywhere I go. I'm not smart enough to keep an anonymous profile out on the socials, and so I don't even try to. Thank you for listening. Feel free to reach out.
Well, yeah, and Brandon, thank you for coming and talking about your experiences. I still want to work on some future ones. I know you got. I've been talking with you. I really enjoyed this one. Let's think about some of that maritime stuff. I know people are probably going to be really interested in that. So thanks for coming on, and you have a great day. All right.
All right. Thank you, Don.
All right. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another concept overview with the SANS ICS and Cutaway security teams. Please let us know if there are other topics you would like us to cover in the comments below. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to like and subscribe to the SANS ICS YouTube channel. This has been Don C. Weber of Cutaway Security. Go forth and do good things.